Good evening, and right before we dive into the main story, I'll quickly mention that if you are just sick and tired of all the censorship on this platform, as well as the myriad of other platforms out there, and if you're looking for a source of actual honest news, well, you're in luck, because the Epoch Times recently extended its awesome sale on subscriptions, just 25 cents a week for the whole year, which if you do the math, works itself out to just be a single dollar a month. And so, if you would actually like a source of honest news, which oftentimes gets completely blacked out and ignored by the mainstream legacy news outlets, well, consider trying a subscription for yourself. I'll throw a link to the sale page. It'll be right there at the top of the description box below. I hope you check it out. Now, diving into the main topic, last week, in a massive victory for the pro-life cause, the state Supreme Court of Georgia, they went ahead, they struck down a lower court's decision, and in so doing, they ruled that the state's heartbeat law is in fact constitutional, meaning that they upheld the 6-week abortion ban that was in, you can say, legislative limbo within the state for about the last 4 years now. Although, in order to explain how exactly we got to this point, as well as what this means for both Georgia as well as the rest of the country moving forward, let's back up for a quick moment and start at the very beginning, right after you take a super quick moment to smash those like and subscribe buttons, which will quite literally force the algorithm to share this video as well as this information out to ever more people. Now, to start with, you might remember how about a year and a half ago, the U.S. Supreme Court issued a monumental decision regarding abortions, a decision which quite literally shook the political landscape throughout the entirety of the country. Specifically, 49 years after its initial inception, the U.S. Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade on June 24th of last year, and in so doing, they eliminated the so-called constitutional right to an abortion, which they claimed never existed in the first place. And in the majority opinion in that case, which for your reference was written by Justice Sam Alito, the Supreme Court, they formally overturned Roe v. Wade, and they effectively sent the whole issue of abortions back down to the level of the individual states. Here's part of what the majority opinion said, again, back in June of last year. Quote, "We hold that Roe and Casey, which is another abortion-related case, must be overruled. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is implicitly protected by any constitutional provision, including the one on which the defenders of Roe and Casey now chiefly rely, the Due Process Clause of the 14th Amendment. That provision has been held to guarantee some rights that are not mentioned in the Constitution, but any such right must be deeply rooted in this nation's history and tradition and implicit in the concept of ordered liberty. It is time to heed the Constitution and return the issue of abortion to the people's elected representatives." And it was the last part of that sentence there, about returning the general issue of abortions back down to the people's elected representatives, which is essentially the heart of the matter. Because what this U.S. Supreme Court decision did was that essentially it served as a clarification saying that there was no inherent constitutional right to an abortion, and that instead the issue should be returned to the individual states. And since there is a slim to none chance of any federal abortion law, one way or the other, going into effect at the congressional level, well, that means in practice that the decision of whether or not to outlaw abortions is now in the hands of the individual state legislatures. And indeed, as soon as the Supreme Court ruling was made, the impact was instantaneous, with each individual state in the country now having the power to once again decide their own level of abortion access. And so while states like California, New York, Oregon, and Washington passed legislation to make abortion as legal and as easy as possible, you had other states which went in the exact opposite direction. States like Texas, Oklahoma, Louisiana, and Arkansas, they moved to make abortion as illegal as possible, with very limited exceptions, usually when the life of the mother was in danger. And so this was all the general backdrop for what took place over in the state of Georgia. Because you see, back in the year 2019, Georgia House Bill 481 was passed through the state legislature. The official title of that particular piece of legislation was the Living Infants Fairness Equality Act, otherwise known as the Life Act. And essentially this was a heartbeat law. Specifically, the statute outlawed abortions, quote, "if an unborn child has been determined to have a detectable human heartbeat," meaning that abortions would no longer be allowed in the state after about the 6-week mark, which is typically the point when you can hear the baby's heartbeat in the womb. Now, as you could imagine, this bill drew immediate, massive blowback. For instance, more than 50 high-profile actors, screenwriters, and directors, they signed onto an official statement which threatened to boycott the state of Georgia if this bill was signed into law, which would be a massive blow to the Georgian economy, given the fact that film and TV productions, they were about a $10 billion per year industry within the state. However, despite this ultimatum, Governor Brian Kemp, he went ahead and on May 7th of 2019, he signed the bill into law, effectively outlawing abortions after the 6-week mark. But, as you could have likely guessed, this law was almost immediately challenged by the abortion lobby. Specifically, the ACLU, Planned Parenthood, as well as the Center for Reproductive Rights, they collectively sued the state of Georgia in order to get an injunction. They were successful, the injunction against the law was passed, and then subsequently, several months later, in July of 2020, a state judge ruled that the heartbeat law in itself was unconstitutional. Now, the state of Georgia appealed that decision, and the appeals process was complicated. It was multifaceted. It was going back and forth. There were multiple courts, multiple plaintiffs. There were multiple lawsuits as well that were going back and forth throughout multiple courts. That was until June 24th of the year 2022. That was when the U.S. Supreme Court, they overturned Roe versus Wade. And once the quote-unquote constitutional right to an abortion was off the books, well, the legal landscape, it completely changed. And so the state of Georgia, they appealed the ruling. And after about a year and a half of further legal back and forth, well, just last week, in a 6-1 decision, the Supreme Court of Georgia, they threw out the lower court's decision and they upheld the 6-week ban on abortions. Specifically, speaking for the majority of the court, here's what Justice Verda Colvin wrote. Quote, "The Life Act was enacted against the backdrop of the same United States Constitution that governs today. The United States Supreme Court does not supply meaning to and has no power to change the independent and fixed meaning of the United States Constitution. And we have no authority to defy now controlling United States Supreme Court precedent interpreting the United States Constitution when determining whether the Life Act violated the Constitution at the time of its enactment." And as such, they upheld the 6-week ban on abortion, striking down the earlier lower court's decision, and the state Supreme Court, they allowed the heartbeat bill to go into effect in Georgia. And as you can imagine, the state was quite pleased with this particular ruling, given the fact that they've been fighting for it for the past 4 years. For instance, the Attorney General of Georgia, he released this statement following the decision. Quote, "I'm pleased with the court's decision and will continue to defend the constitutionality of Georgia's Life Act." However, the story gets a lot deeper, which we'll get into right after I introduce the sponsor of today's episode by showing you this little piece of money. Or rather, I should say that this is fake money being printed into oblivion by those geniuses over in Washington, D.C. And so before they completely obliterate your life savings, what I recommend you do is to convert that fake money into real money, which is physical gold and silver. And the best company to use is the sponsor of today's episode, American Hartford Gold, who also happens to be my own personal gold and silver bullion dealer. They have thousands of other 5-star ratings across the country. They have an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau. They ship quickly, directly to your doorstep. Their product listings are awesome. They're stacked with great options of gold and silver bullion and coins, and they have amazing customer service. When you pick up the phone and call them, you feel good knowing you support a company that supports the truth getting out into the wider American audience. And so calling them up is a no-brainer. But best of all, if you tell them that Roman sent you, they will throw in up to $5,000 worth of free silver with your first purchase. It's 866-242-2352, or you can simply text the word Roman, R-O-M-A-N, Roman, to 65532. Of course, all their details will be down in the description box below. And now, let's head on back to the studio. Likewise, you had Miss Lauren Eden, who herself was an abortion survivor, meaning her mother tried to abort her in the womb, but she survived and was successfully born. When speaking with CNN regarding what took place in Georgia, she said the following, quote, "I'm thrilled. It's going to protect so many innocent lives like mine. This will not only protect the lives of unborn babies, but also the lives of the mothers who we know suffer so much pain after an abortion procedure." On the flip side, however, the Democrats at both the state and the federal level, they were not pleased with this particular decision. For instance, speaking on behalf of the White House, Ms. Karine Jean-Pierre said the following regarding what took place in Georgia. Quote, "Women have been denied the medical care they desperately need to preserve their health, including being turned away from emergency rooms, forced to travel hundreds of miles for care, and face complications that make it more difficult to have children in the future." Likewise, you had Ms. Monica Simpson, who is the executive director of one of the organizations suing the state of Georgia, saying that she also criticized the decision, saying this, quote, "Today's devastating decision means that our people will continue to face the horrible reality that they are in today, where Georgians are suffering because they cannot access abortion care. This abortion ban has forced Georgians to travel across state lines at great expense or continue the life-altering consequences of pregnancy and childbirth against their wills." However, regardless of this criticism, the state Supreme Court ruled as they did. They upheld the 6-week ban on abortion, and in so doing, they sent the case back down to the lower court for further proceedings. And so what we're seeing taking place in Georgia right now is a microcosm of what we're seeing play itself out across the entirety of the country ever since last year, with some states making abortion easier and other states outlawing it altogether. In fact, here's a map from the website of the Guttmacher Institute, which is a pro-choice organization previously part of Planned Parenthood. And this map, it lays out the current state of abortion laws throughout the whole country. And as you can see, 15 states have near total abortion bans. Those are the states in dark red. And many other states, they have abortion bans that start at the 6, 12, 15, 22, or 24-week mark. And also, according to this data, you have 7 states which allow abortion all the way up until the moment of birth. For reference, those states are Oregon, New Mexico, Colorado, Minnesota, New Jersey, Vermont, and Alaska. And so that's the general situation as it currently stands. If you'd like to learn more about the state Supreme Court decision over in Georgia, or if you'd like to check out that interactive abortion map for yourself, I'll throw all my research links down into the description box below this video for you to peruse at your own leisure. And then lastly, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, if you are indeed sick and tired of all the censorship on this platform, with or without the federal government's involvement, well, you're in luck. Because, as I mentioned at the top of the episode as well, the Epoch Times has recently extended its awesome sale on subscriptions. Just 25 cents a week for the whole year, which if you do the math, works itself out to just be $1 a month. And so if you've been on the fence about subscribing, you're not sure whether you're ready to take the leap, but you're definitely sure that you're looking for a source of honest news, well, perhaps take the sale as an opportunity to try the Epoch Times for yourself. That way, not only can you get access to a plethora of great content, but also I myself publish anywhere between 1 to 3 exclusive episodes of Facts Matter over on Epoch TV. And so if you'd like to check out some extra episodes of Facts Matter every single week, including a huge backlog from the last 2 or 3 so years, well, you can find it all over on the website. I'll throw a link to the sale page. It'll be right there at the top of the description box below. You can just click on that link and head on over to the sale page and try the Epoch Times yourself for just $1 a month. You can, of course, cancel anytime, but I'm sure that you won't. I'm sure that you'll love it and be a subscriber for a long, long time to come. So again, that link is right there at the top of the description box below. I hope you click on it. I hope you subscribe and hope that you join us over on theepochtimes.com. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed. Most importantly, stay free.